So good evening. Thank you for joining us this week for the 5-day study circle. A special welcome to Meera. And
Thank you.
yeah, and I don't know whom, like maybe Maha and I didn't catch the name. So, but welcome all. And I just like to, remind us again that the beauty of the circles, these study circles is that on our own, we usually have like we have one subject or one interest or one book, one or two that we pick up, and we are usually restricted to that. But in a circle we are we have such a wide exposure to what everybody is reading, and it's quite a mystery how somehow everything merges in the end. Most of all, I mean, even if it doesn't merge, it's fine, but still the beauty of it is a big blessing. So thank you so much for coming today. And I would actually like to start with the sharing today, and then we can pause, move ahead. So I'll share the screen. So the topic is resurrection. And the conventional definition of resurrection is bringing back something which is and which hasn't existed in a long time, or it's usually used for Christ, as we, I think a lot of us would be aware, but that's the conventional meaning. And let's see what we have here. Resurrection means for us the falling off of the old consciousness, but it is not only a rebirth, a sudden change which completely breaks with the past. There is a certain continuity in it between dying to your old self, your low exterior nature, and starting quite anew. In the experience of resurrection, the movement of discarding the old being is closely connected with that of the rising up from it, of the new consciousness and the new strength, so that from what is thrown off the best can unite in a new creation with what has succeeded. The true significance of resurrection is that the divine consciousness awakes from the unconsciousness into which it has gone down and lost itself. The divine consciousness becomes once more aware of itself in spite of its descent into the world of death, night, and obscurity. That world of obscurity is darker even than our physical night. If you came up after plunging into it, you would actually find the most impenetrable night layer. Just as returning from the true light of the divine consciousness, the supramental light without obscurity, you will find the physical sun black. But even in the depths of that supreme darkness and supreme light lies hidden. I'm sorry, but even in the depths of that supreme darkness, the supreme light lies hidden. Let that light and that consciousness awaken in you. Let there be the great resurrection. So I thought this was an appropriate thing considering the day, and how, even this afternoon only, Monica and I were again discussing this, that how just letting go, we mostly want to let go of things, we mostly want to change, but we don't get anything new, right? Like we don't, while we are dropping something, while we are letting something go, it's very important that we hold on to something new. Otherwise, that dropping, like we were discussing, doesn't happen, it doesn't last, it doesn't stick, and we wonder what went wrong. So here, the like what resonated was just this, how beautifully it was said that it's a continuity, right? But for most of us, we usually see that, why is it that I'm not able to change? Why is it that, I have looked at anger and despised anger or accepted anger or done everything with it? Why does it again come, right? Because I am still available, sitting there, that come, make me angry. I am kind of again dancing on its tunes. But that continuity of letting go of the past and moving into whatever that I deem, I think of a better value, as in, like it says, right, higher consciousness, something which will take me towards the truth more than where I am, because in my domain, everything is relative, right? Like there's less false and less, lesser false and lesser false, because somehow truth seems, I don't want to complete that sentence, but yeah, so that was the continuity. And I also, again, when I was, I don't know, maybe 10 years back, I was given a birthday card. And you know how they say that there are no coincidences, right? Especially when you're on the path. I was given a card which says that in the depth of my darkness, I found the sun shining within me. And I've got, like, I don't know, 2000 cards, when we were young, cards, the paper cards used to be there when I was young, I must say, not we. So it's really, really, really beautiful to remember, and important and crucial to remember, I think, that even when I am in the depths of darkness, there is light within me which will shine. And I think that keeps us going, that, it's a phase and the light is there. So that was my thing. And I think I'll just share it again. And anybody who wants to say anything, very welcome to unmute.
I think this line, the thing that you were reiterating, in the experience of resurrection, the movement of discarding the old being is closely connected with that of the rising up from it of the new consciousness. So as you were kind of stressing upon, I think this is very, very relevant, and the new strength, so that from what is thrown off, the best can unite in a new creation with what has succeeded. So just to give it an example, what you were already sharing, I think one thing which has helped me, and this example I have many a time shared again and again, that for example, if I want to drop alcohol, I don't want to now have alcohol. Now what is happening is that I am having alcohol and the bottles are there in front of me, but now I don't want to have it. So I'm looking at them, okay, I'm not going to have it. Looking at them, I'm not going. So in the meantime, I'm not doing anything new. I think this is what Taru was stressing upon, that I have to pick up something new, which is higher and loftier. And Mother herself has stated in many, many different ways that to distract yourself from these lower movements, Mother says that distract yourself. It's good to distract. If you have anger, if you have jealousy, don't follow the movement and distract yourself, but distract yourself with something higher and loftier. Once you have decided that now I don't want to walk that way. So first, this conviction has to come from within, that now I don't want to walk that way. I think that conviction has to be there, because I have walked enough. I've been jealous enough. I've been angry enough. I know it is of no use. So now I don't want to walk, but I still see it's present, like a spider in a room. It's still present. So what to do? It, attracts attention. Now that's why Mother says that develop your individuality. See what are your likings, what are your preferences, what are you good at, what are maybe art, music, maybe you're good at social service, maybe you're good at jhadu, doesn't matter what point it is, but make that important in your life. Give it time. because we all are full of, that's why mother says that we are all full of these unique permutation combinations of beauties, all of us, no matter how evil a person may appear, you know. And to nurture that, so that while I am evading the alcohol, now I'm not picking up the alcohol, I have to pick up something else which is more beautiful, more connected with my truth, rather than the lower nature. And that is also very grounding in nature, actually, these two lines, because you get to know that they are not going to disappear. No matter you may have on the path for 50-60 years, anger will be there as long as you have a body. So that also grounds us a lot, because if I see someone else angry, I see that anger in me also lurking behind the corner. So I don't become like I am very superior and 60 years of experience, or even 20, experience is experience, doesn't matter. But we do have, many a time this superiority in ourselves, that I don't get angry. See, you do. But then when I see my anger lurking around the corner, ready to attack me like a cloud, dark cloud, and I am now choosing not to follow it consciously. Mother says about choice, right choice, making the right choice each moment. I think then we also empathize with people. So instead of becoming angry at someone, we actually become compassionate, that, hey, brother, sister, I'm with you, standing with you on the same ground. So yeah, it helps, this helps me. Yeah, thank you.
You just shared that when somebody is angry, we are like, oh, I don't get angry. But, I think we don't even go there. We are so right there sitting that, oh, he's getting angry or she's getting angry. Apne se connect. If we were able to actually see that I do or I don't half of the time, I would not even go there. Just one thing that when you were sharing, I think it's really important to mother had also talked about it, about the void, right? Like when we let go of something, that void we cannot handle, right? Like it has to be filled with something, not her exact words, but how, like, I think it was something like that. The same energy that you use in being disappointed at something you couldn't do or were still unable to conquer, you can again use it to actually strengthen your efforts rather than sit and sigh. So basically it's a fact that if I'm letting go of something, especially uses when people leave their bodies, right, at how that void is left and how it has to be filled, and that's what hurts us the most. That's what can pain us the most, that it has to be filled without, I mean, it's kind of the cleverness of the mind that sometimes it says that yes, I've got it right, like, but it has to be have, like, not exactly just similar things, because that's what we usually do, right? One relationship, second, third, similar things, similar kind, we keep doing. But how you beautifully said that it has to be based on what you want, what you resonate with, but what you are good with. If you put that, then the life becomes more beautiful, right? Then where we, what we let go of.
It's actually like, the mother also shares a word. It's like blossoming of your individuality, blossoming just like a flower blossoms. And this resurrection that, I think it was really beautiful. So thank you for bringing that up. And it's almost like I'm giving myself a new chance, and allowing myself to bloom, which I don't, because all my focus and energy is on matters which are not of that important. Yeah.
Yeah, the thoughts also, no, but negative thoughts, if we are not replacing with the positive ones, just that prayer always surge up in me. I want to get rid of those negative thoughts. No, it doesn't help me actually. Only if we replace it again with positive thoughts, yeah, little bit I can. When I face the same situation again, okay, that time those negative thoughts are lesser actually. So as you told, yeah, it is very true. We have to replace it again and again with the positive thoughts and move forward. Yes.
What Manikaji was speaking about, that blooming, I came across a word, outflowering. outflowering in synthesis of yoga. So that the internet, I was searching for the meaning, and also I could not get proper meaning of it actually. But somewhere a little bit I came to know it's something like blooming. Actually, it's connected with the blooming, out blooming. So our changing our the previous stance. It is something like that resurrection. We are from the old and the dead, and the new one is taking birth. So outflowering. Anything else in this outflowering word?
I can just look it up on the incarnate world, but it's a very beautiful word. And it is a beautiful word.
I think resonates also with the self-exceeding. Mother and Sri Aurobindo talk about that only human beings have capacity of self-exceeding. So what I was before a day ago, I can self-exceed myself. So I can outflower myself. I don't know if it's in that context, but appears resonating with self-exceeding also.
Blossoming, no? Not blossoming, okay.
Out blossoming or flowering?
Flowering, yeah. No, I call, yeah.
Yeah, I think
Very beautiful.
yeah, context seems like that whatever it's a self-perfecting instrument for, and whenever we are self-perfecting ourselves, we are always ready to get rid of the older and ready to move into something new, and then that new also becomes old after some time, and then so yesterday I was actually doing something on just transcribing or editing something on essays of Gita. And there, Dr. Anand Reddy, I think I shared also something from him on the group. He was sharing that with Sri Aurobindo, it was so beautiful that he says that whatever scripture is there, right now, at the moment, whatever interpretation one may give, or maybe there are 10,000 interpreters of that same scripture, after a few years, the same scripture will demand a new interpretation according to the age. No, so that was very beautiful, and Sri Aurobindo himself said that this is not the last word that I am saying. So that's I think what great humility of Sri Aurobindo, that he's including almost everything, making it so wide. And even then he's saying, don't think that this is the last interpretation, because as age changes, a newer interpretation will be required. So there, I think this self-perfection and always becoming a better and better version of oneself, and shining that inner light out in more and more perfection. That's what is coming to me. Yeah, if anyone has anything to share.
Yeah, even in Gita it is there, I think. Sabda Brahmadi Vardade. You go beyond the words of Shastra. Because actual Veda is inside your heart. It will show you the path. So you can go beyond the words of Shastra, actually. Yeah.
I have got the context. If you can kindly put it on the individual yoga then turns from its separateness. This is the sentence starts. The individual yoga yeah. So in this sentence and the next sentence also it has been used. The individual yoga then turns from its separateness and becomes a part of the collective yoga of the divine nature in the human race. The liberated individual, being united with the divine in self and spirit, becomes in his natural being a self-perfecting instrument for the perfect outflowering of the divine in humanity. Then the next sentence, next paragraph. This outflowering has two terms. First comes the growth out of the separative human ego into the unity of the spirit. So that was the, what I understood is something like the resurrection, the separating human ego into the unity of the spirit. Then the possession of the divine nature in its proper and its higher forms, and no longer in the inferior forms of the mental being, which are a mutilated translation and not the authentic text of the original script of divine nature in the cosmic individual. So this is the first time I got this term, and I was from the beginning I was not very comfortable, which I was saying.
This is very beautiful. Again, each word of Mother and Sri Aurobindo is such filled with beauty. So if you have, seen senior or maybe read stories about senior sadhaks in the ashram, or people, senior people connected with Mother Sri Aurobindo, who are really, really, true devotees or true disciples, with them we see, I have a feeling with them we see that they are forever learning. They never, as if they don't have a boundary. And there I think you see this outflowering or continuous expression of the divine through them as instruments, and there is no limit to that beauty. I think that's what I can relate with here, that, and slowly first a connection with the inner divine, and then Mother and Sri Aurobindo also talk about transformation of the lower nature, which is actually happens after this unification first has happened, or a bit of glimpse of unification happens with the spirit. After that you see more the lower in you, and that begins to get transformed with the light of the inner, and that is a never ending process. I think that's why we say divine is infinite, and that's why our beauty is also infinite. I think that's the beauty, that no matter how beautiful one may become, there is no end to that beauty, because there would be still some or the other amount of ugliness left, weakness left, which now needs to be transformed. So more and more challenges may come up to show me what lies hidden. So yeah, very, very powerful.
Thank you.
I remember reading it somewhere. I don't remember exactly where now. Somebody had asked Mother about, how did the like the non-divine forces came into existence or something like that. And Mother had said that there is divine and there is undivine or non-divine. And the only thing that is not divine now, I mean, which had use at certain time, because there is nothing in existence which didn't have a use, a purpose. But it's just that when we keep holding on to something which now must be let go, that becomes undivine for practical purposes. But otherwise, everything started with the divine origin for a purpose. And that's the only distinction. So that was also quite beautiful in the same regard. Then one doesn't judge, right? Like it just sees that, okay, this is reaching the divine. It's like, yeah, or I'm holding on to something. And yeah.
This actually connects with the renunciation. So with Tenzing Palmo, we were listening to this something on renunciation. And she said that true renunciation is when you kind of, you shed off. So it was on you. And usually when we are talking about renunciation, we are talking about as if a feeling of sacrifice comes in, that, oh, I am renouncing the world, as if I'm letting go of something very important. And, like it still attracts me, but I am renouncing. So she was talking about renunciation in a different manner, that renunciation is actually maturing out of this oldness that you were sharing, that it becomes undivine, because you don't not anger may be required at one moment, it was when I was young, maybe it was required for getting through my ways, but now it seems unnecessary, as if I don't want to be there. So she was talking of renunciation in terms of that you mature out of it. Now you don't even look at it. So for example, for us, when we were little, sweets and candies were so attractive, and oh, Papa, give me a lollipop, so attractive. But now we don't even look at lollipop. So this is just a very trivial example of true renunciation, that you mature out of it.
Yeah.
I think that maturity and ripening she was talking about, that whether it's alcohol, social gatherings, or whatever, now you don't feel the need of it at all. So it's kind of shedding off those layers. Yeah.
I think the example, Monica, that you had used when you were sharing this with me was like, how a leaf or a fruit, when it's ripe, it just falls. It doesn't need to hold on to the tree anymore, right? It's done. So it's not a sacrifice that it's, the tree is letting go of it or it has let go of the tree, right? That's our drama, because we like stories and we like, sentiments and emotions about everything and not facts, but it's done. It's time, right? Like, so yeah.
Yeah, even mother once said, it seems actually, if you feel that pain of sacrifice, it is not a true renunciation. Yeah, it should be a natural one actually. Even Mother and Sri Aurobindo, they also renounced so many realizations, no? Step by step, they renounced it actually. Yeah. So beautiful.
Also, whenever we are renouncing, we have something to look forward to. So Sri Aurobindo says that when I had this experience of, say, Nirgun Brahman or Sagun
Yeah.
Brahman, I knew that there is something more than that. So as mother always says, ever forward, that your eyes are always looking. That's why, eyes may be in front, that they're not at our back. Because let us always kind of look ahead, what is more, what is beyond all these limitations. Yeah.
So I wanted to share something regarding what we just heard. So yesterday I was experiencing this. So I was trying to do a painting. I had learned this grid, sacred geometry grid very recently. So I wanted to do it straight on the canvas, but I felt, no, okay, let me do it on the notebook and get it perfect, and then I'll do it on the canvas. So I did it in the notebook, but then when I did it in the canvas, it didn't come out right. So I had to like tweak it. But this grid I'd already done like twice or thrice previously. So that's like exactly what you were saying, that every time you do it, there are certain limitations in that and you have to work around it and it becomes more perfect. So you can never say that, okay, no, I've learned this perfectly and every time I do it, it will come out the same way.
I think with art and music, or these skills, when we learn, we see this very, very kind of strongly, that musicians or artists, they're always trying to self-exceed themselves.
Yeah.
There would be no beautiful artist who would say, I am the best, because there is this story of a musician, I think it may be Pandit Bismillah Khan, when he was on his deathbed and maybe thinking or ruminating about past one day, and he started to cry, and there was one person sitting next to him and he said, why are you crying, what happened? And he said that I am just realizing that I don't even know the Gandharv of Sare Gama. And such a celebrated deep musician tells us so much of grounding is possible. The more you kind of go into it, I think the more we go, we realize there is no end. There is no end to it, to either perfection or divine, both.
But true humility will set in, no? When you go deep into it. Yes, correct. Today I read something about suffering actually, from Notes on the Way. You can type through actually, why is there suffering? It is from Collected Works of Mother, Notes on the Way. Why is there suffering? How to cure suffering? Yesterday we discussed in Savitri session also, no, about this suffering and ignorance. Yeah, it's a very beautiful thing. Yeah, this one. Yeah. Why is there suffering? How to cure suffering? For a long time, quite recently, That is to say, for days together, there was a very acute, very intense, very clear perception that the action of the force translated itself externally by what we call suffering, because that is the only kind of vibration which can pull matter out of its inertia. The supreme peace, the supreme calm are deformed and disfigured into inertia and into tamas. And precisely because this was the deformation of true peace and calm, there was no reason why it should change. A certain vibration of awakening, of reawakening was necessary to come out of this tamas that could not pass directly from tamas to peace. Something was needed to shake the tamas, and that is translated externally by suffering. Next para also, it's very beautiful. Next para, I am speaking that here of physical suffering, because all the other sufferings, vital, mental, emotional sufferings, are due to a wrong working of the mind, and these may simply be classed together as falsehood. That's all. But physical suffering gives me the impression of a child being beaten, because here in matter, falsehood has become ignorance. That is to say, there is no bad will. No bad will is there in matter. All is inertia and ignorance. Complete ignorance of the truth, ignorance of the origin, ignorance of the possibility, and ignorance even of what is to be done in order not to suffer physically. This ignorance is everywhere in the cells, and it is only the experience of what is translated in this rudimentary consciousness as suffering, which can awaken, bring forth the need to know and to cure, and that aspiration to transform oneself. Shall I go further, or yeah, so whole thing is very beautiful when I read that.
I think maybe we can
Yeah.
cover
Yeah.
already very intense.
Yeah, that itself very deep actually.
So Chitraji, if you could share what
Yeah, the big in this I found it very thing. No, this one I am speaking here of physical suffering, because all the other suffering, vital, mental, emotional sufferings, are due to a wrong working of the mind, and this may simply be classed together as falsehood. That's all. I felt this is a new thing for me actually. So far I thought, yeah, everything is suffering. It is all included in that category only. But mother, how she clearly brought out, yeah, these are all the wrong working of the mind. Only the physical suffering, she is very compassionate to say. It is like a beating of a child actually. The physical suffering gives me the impression of a child being beaten, because here in matter, falsehood has become ignorance. Yeah, this paragraph I really struck me a lot actually. This one, this is a new thing for me. Yeah. This ignorance is everywhere in the cells, it seems, and it is only the experience of what is translated in this rudimentary consciousness as suffering. So in further paragraphs, mother is very compassionately, she is telling only that divine love can cure that. How the suffering and progress goes together also, she's telling, she's explaining.
If you want to read that, please go ahead.
Yeah. It has become a certainty, because in all the cells there is born the aspiration, which is becoming more and more intense, and which wonders at the resistance. But they have observed that whenever something goes wrong in the working, that is to say, instead of being supple, spontaneous, natural, the working becomes a painful effort, a struggle against something which takes the appearance of a bad will, but is only a reticence that does not understand. At that moment, the intensity of the aspiration of the call is tenfold, becomes constant. The difficulty is to remain at that state of intensity. Generally, everything falls back. I cannot say into a somnolence, but a kind of relaxation. You take things easy, and it is only when the inner disorder becomes painful that the intensity grows and remains permanent for hours together without slackening. The call, the aspiration, the will to be united with the divine, to become the divine, is maintained at its maximum. Why? Because there was externally what is called a physical disorder, a suffering. Otherwise, when there is no suffering, from time to time, one soars up, then one falls back into slackening. Again, another time, one soars up once more. There is no end to it. That lasts eternally. If we want things to go fast, relatively fast according to the rhythm of our life, this smack of the whip is necessary. I am convinced of it because as soon as you are within your inner being, you look upon that with contempt as regards oneself. But then all of a sudden, when there comes the true compassion of the divine love, and when one sees all these things that appear so horrible, so abnormal, so absurd, this great pain which is upon all beings and even upon all things, then there takes birth in this physical being the aspiration to soothe, to cure, to remove that. There is in love at its origin something which is translated constantly as the intervention of grace, a force, a sweetness, something like a vibration of solace spread everywhere, but which an illumined consciousness can direct, concentrate on some points. And it is there itself that I saw the true use one can make of thought. Thought serves as a kind of, this is also very beautiful, kind of channel to carry this vibration from place to place wherever it is necessary. This force, this vibration of sweetness is there in a static way upon the world, pressing in order to be received. But it is an impersonal action, and thought, illumined thought, surrendered thought, thought which is no longer anything but an instrument, which tries no longer to initiate things, which is satisfied with being moved by the higher consciousness. Thought serves an intermediary to establish a contact, a relation, and to enable this impersonal force to act wherever it is necessary upon definite points. This is a very long thing. Probably we can discuss something and go ahead, I think.
I think this last paragraph is also
Yeah.
very, the one that you just read,
Yeah.
the true compassion of divine love.
And also how she, I mean, that about the thought, how she's telling, no, thought, illumined thought, surrendered thought, thought which is no longer anything but an instrument. What does it actually mean? Without any expectation, no?
Yes. So I think to me it relates with especially, I think compassion, divine love, and illumined thought, these are all one with each other.
Yeah.
So to me, how I understand this is that when I am in consciously, when I'm knowingly there as awareness, usually we are always awareness, but I am lost. Like I don't know that I am awareness, right? Because it's because of the awareness I know the story in my head or what I am feeling right now. So I'm always awareness anyway. I'm never away from my true essence, but I don't know it. So it's like I am a king, but I don't know that I am a king. And I remain a beggar for all the time. So now how I relate with this paragraph is, which resonates very strongly, is that when I am knowingly as awareness, thoughts may appear, feelings may appear, but I am again and again taking stance as awareness. Okay, who am I? I am this awareness. So I'm not getting lost in the thoughts, feeling, content, which I usually get lost. Now, when I'm there, then it's very, very, I'm sure all of us have glimpses of that, that we feel a love, we feel compassion.
Yeah, correct.
We are love, we are compassion. We don't even feel. We are love, we are compassion. I cannot hurt anyone if I am in that, if I can call state, although it's not a state, but still, let us call it a state. So there, since I'm now not demanding anything from life or happenings, usually thought is always demanding, as you said. It's always expecting. You have this inner restlessness and you want to fulfill through either this story, that story. Acha, this person should agree, that person should agree. So some restlessness is always there. While when I take stance as awareness, the restlessness subsides. So I'm not looking, I'm not thirsty in that moment. Now, in that moment, whatever ideas or intuitive thoughts may come, if I follow them, then they are without any expectation, because I am not attaching my sense of self to them. I'm not saying that if I follow this, I'll become a bigger person, because I don't want to become a bigger person.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So that is what I kind of relate with, that illumine thought, that it will always do benefit of myself and others. It will not manipulate and demand, and that expectation thing that you were sharing. Yes. Yeah. But for us, I think it begins in very short glimpses, because we start from ignorance. So these phases just come and go. Again, I'm in crowded with my lower nature. Yes.
Yeah, and also as mother said, no, only that uplifting hour of stress, I think there won't be any demands. Only with that focusing, that situation should be healed or that person has to be healed. Yeah, only that focusing will be there. No, there won't be, only during the time of stress. As mother, again and again she stressed upon that. No, actually.
And it's so true, because if we see our life, today, again, I was sharing with Taru that imagine that two people, and this is a very old example that I give, but it still works. Two people are talking to each other about what do I demand from you, and this is how you behave. You should not behave like this. All the things that we are engaged in all the time. Immediately there is fire in the room. In that moment, all the bullshit will go away. I will not be concerned about that. What we both will be concerned about it, how to save our life. So as if all that was just a dream. But that dream appears so solid when I don't have anything intense in my life. So to give ourselves some intensity, because we all love intensity, so as we were talking earlier, that to absorb ourselves in something that we love to do, give ourselves to some task which is higher than us. I think that is the only saving grace. Otherwise, the pull of lower is always there.
And also we can, if we engage intensely in all these readings and this spiritual path also, we have to replace that. That's why then only that intensity will be always maintained in one way, actually. Not when the problem comes, we are that intensity increased and we can pray without any selfishness and without any further demands. But not like that. We have to increase I felt like that recently. We have to increase that intensity in a good way, actually. No, that prayer we can do for everyone, as you used to share, those Buddhist teachings. There also I find that actually, those compassion, that love. What is her name? You used to tell that Buddhist teacher.
Yeah, Tenzin Palmo?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That is also beautiful.
And also, why we are talking about this intensity is because all of us have life energy.
Yeah, that's all.
It's like a force that we have. Now, the same force, if not directed in proper channels, it will lead into intense negative emotions like jealousy, anger, resentment, too much of violence, aggression, annoyance, irritation. Because energy is the same. It's the same fuel container as if, I have, if not put at the right place. And this we see very often with little children.
Yeah.
who have little children, that if we do not channel their energy in challenging activities according to their nature,
Yeah.
then they become very notorious. And we are also notorious, as adults, we are notorious in our
Thoughts are notorious, especially. It will, yeah. It won't allow you to sit and, yeah.
This can be connected, I think, with the pandemic that had happened also. Like you were mentioning before, pre-COVID, we're all running around malls. Everything was so normal. But now, after COVID happened, like looking back, at least at the face of the second wave or something, everyone only cared about saving their lives and sort
Yeah.
of seeing what is really important. Because at the end of the day, even if you don't get out of your house, what was really important was just your essentials. And like we can never go back to that. And yeah, this was a very intense phase. And at least what I observe is whoever has picked up something new, like a new habit, or has done something for themselves, are much happier about the pandemic. And while there are others who are frustrated, saying that, I can't get out of the house, and I can't do this, and I can't do that.
Actually, these sessions also happened for me during COVID pandemic only. Yeah. Can't go out. Yeah. It's a blessing. And also, it further goes on about the progress and the suffering. Suffering and progress goes together. If we want, if there is time, we will finish that actually. Taru?
Yeah, let's just see if there's anybody else who had
Yeah,
something. And
yeah,
yeah, perfect.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chitra. So anyone else who would want to go next? Anything you have read or resonated with from the conversations right now or during the week?
I was today concentrating on surrender, the self-surrender. So the sentence starts with life, not a remote silent.
Life not a remote silence.
Remote silent or high uplifted ecstatic.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'll just read out first. Life not a remote silent or high uplifted ecstatic. Beyond life alone is the field of our yoga. The transformation of our superficial, narrow, and fragmentary human way of thinking, seeing, feeling, and being into a deep and wide spiritual consciousness and an integrated inner and outer existence and of our ordinary human living into the divine way of life must be its central purpose. The means towards this supreme end is a self-giving of all our nature to the divine. Everything must be given to the divine within us, to the universal all, and to the transcendent supreme. An absolute concentration of our will, our heart, and our thought on that one and manifold divine, an unreserved self consecration of our whole being to the divine alone. This is the decisive moment, the turning of the ego to that which is infinitely greater than itself, its self-giving and indispensable surrender. So I was trying to find out how to surrender is a complete surrender, total surrender. Like in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord Krishna is saying, they call Bhagavan Uvacho, the God is speaking. Sarva dharman parityajya mamekang sharanang braja aham tang sarva papebhyo makshayami. The Lord Krishna is saying that leave everything to me. It means the surrender. You surrender yourself, and I will clear you from all the sins if you have, or the self surrender, your life will be totally changed. Actually, at the time, our the focus will totally change. So I'll be a changed person. So that total surrender. When I try to surrender, we have seen that we get rid of all the problems and the sufferings if you can really, truly, if you can surrender. These are the thoughts which are coming to me when I was reading this. And I have read, there are many devotees or in the ashram, Ramakrishna ashram also, they were disciples of Ramakrishna. So they used to detach the thought process from the happenings. Say like if I say I am not the body, I am not the mind. So whatever the issues are coming to the body, I can forego. If somebody is doing doctor is doing some operation without anesthesia, I will not feel myself if I can withdraw myself from the body. The moment I recognize myself with the body, then the pain is there. The moment I say, no, I am not the body. So what is happening in the body, I don't know. Then comes the mind. So mind also, there are, it's a big storehouse actually, not storehouse. It's like a mad elephant. And in the mind, if I say that all this thought process and all which is creating the issues, so we have to drop it. It is not there. I'm not the mind. So the moment then I'll be free of suffering, and it will be a type of total surrender. Who I am, actually, that will come to the light, and that if I understand, then I will get rid of all those which are creating the uneasiness for me. Thank you.
So interesting that this too is falling under the same category, right? Like the resurrection, the concentration, and again, how again and again it's reiterated, right? It cannot be sporadic. If it's sporadic, it doesn't work. It has to be the central purpose.
Taru, can we continue reading the second paragraph, because it sort of allows you to sort of
This one? Is this the one you were saying?
yes.
Would you like to read it?
Okay. So the life of the human creature, as it is ordinarily lived, is composed of a half fixed, half fluid mass of very imperfectly ruled thoughts, perceptions, sensations, emotions, desires, enjoyments, acts, mostly customary and self-repeating, in part only dynamic and self-developing, but all centered around a superficial ego. The sum of movement of these activities eventuates in an internal growth which is partly visible and operative in this life, partly a seed of progress in lives hereafter. This growth of the conscious being, an expansion and increasing self-expression, a more and more harmonized development of his constituent members is the whole meaning and all the pith of human, it's a pith of human existence. It is for this meaningful development of consciousness by thought, will, emotion, desire, action, and experience, leading in the end to a supreme divine self-discovery, that man, the mental being, has entered into this material body. Okay. So all the rest is either auxiliary and subordinate or accidental and otiose. That only matters which sustains and helps the evolution of his nature and the growth, or rather the progressive unfolding and discovery of his self and spirit. All right. So for me, the second paragraph, I think when the first paragraph sort of, it gives a better understanding. I am sorry, but I don't know the meaning of otiose. Anybody can, or maybe I'll look it up later, but yeah.
I think this is also quite connected with what we were reading in Savitri this, I think, Thursday, where he was sharing that then this awakening is caused, slowly as we go through our experiences. So Prakriti is not a enemy of Purusha, but Prakriti is helping the Purusha come alive, like become conscious of himself. So this one here, that you read, it is for this meaningful development of consciousness by thought, will. So these are all movements of Prakriti: thought, will, emotion, desire, action, experience, and it is through meaningful development of consciousness by thought, will, emotion, desire, action, experience, leading in the end to a supreme divine self-discovery. This is what we were reading this Thursday, exact, I think, on these resonating with this, that man, the mental being, has entered into the material body. So very purpose of taking human birth, which mystics and masters have been reiterating, that wake up to your own self, wake up to your own self. Otherwise, you have a wasted human life. And again, you will come because the work has to be done. The work has to be done. So if not in this lifetime, okay, you will wake up in the next one. So again comes the point of divine collaboration. As the mother says, collaborate with the divine. That if I now know this, let me collaborate and let me, find out that what is to be found within this being, and let that into forefront. No, my consciousness, let that into forefront rather than, having the content of consciousness in the forefront. And I think through that one gradually is able to even self-master. Then I can direct that radiance into my thoughts, that radiance into my feelings. Yeah, beautiful. And again, in the previous lines, he's saying harmonized development of his constituent members. Yeah.
Yeah. Usually Sri Aurobindo used to write like this actually. First he would give that essence of that chapter. The surrender is the main thing, no? Next he will take us step by step actually. Who is man, how to then go forward and then surrender. It will be very beautiful, step by step. He'll hold our hands and take us.
Otios is, I think, something to do with practical, that it's not practical. So I think, I mean, you've covered so much, but this part also, that I think it's really important. It really helps one to keep coming back to it, to reduce the stakes. That everything else, like, it's like everything that I pick up and something happens when I take it up personally, it's like not really doing anything for me, right? It's just feeding the ego, or it's just making me feel that, oh, I am so powerful. Like, we were just again, it's weird that we were sharing this even today morning only, that how that I want that power, that if I have an opinion, I have a stance that gives me power, that gives me that, okay, I am this, but that this is so teachered, it's such a, I don't know, all the rest is auxiliary, subordinate, accidental, OTOs, impractical, that only matters, which sustains and helps the evolution of his nature and the growth, or rather the progressive unfolding and discovering of his self and spirit. I was doing a transcript of Alokda the other day, and in that somebody had asked that how do you decide, how do you make decisions, how do you proceed, and he had replied that the only filter is it taking me close to her, is it taking me close to her. And he said that if in this filter, if you have to do something like absolutely weird, like his words were a bit different, but like totally, like like crazy, but if it's taking you close to her, that is the right step. So this reminding that, where am I, do I need to be here, do I need to be here, what is this actually giving me?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think this really helps us, reminding ourselves, as you were sharing, what is this really giving me? To let go of what is really, really trivial. And, we wonder why my life is not beautiful, but our hands are full with ugliness. There is no space for beauty. So if I not let go of, first of all, what is not required, how will beauty arrive? Because the beauty has no space to arrive. Yeah. Alokda many a times mentions this, that the divine is waiting for an exchange offer. Give all the ugliness and take all the beauty. But we keep on saying, no, 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 maybe later. Let me suck on my ugliness. Yes, Taru. Yeah.
Just on that, what you were sharing, there was this thing that we discussed in the harmony circle again from the mother. It was that how all is simple to him who sees things from the height of eternity. Like, not the exact lines, but I stand too close, right? I get too close. Whatever is said, I just take it on me that, Arey, mujhe bol diya, they said it to me, they said it this way, they looked at me this way, I got a feeling that they meant this way. It's like, my God, like we really, that's why Kabir is saying that, I'm standing and crying while everybody is laughing and going merry, that what are you doing? What are you doing? Wake up, wake up, wake up. And we are like, let's first have a party, then maybe tomorrow, from tomorrow, I'll pick up this resolution that I'll wake up, right? There's too much time. Yeah. And yeah.
Ab kya kahe? Your expression was, ab kya kahe? What to say more? Today we were looking at our children playing, me and Taru, we were together, and it was really, children have, they fight in between. At times they're playing nicely and then they fight. And I could not help but kind of amuse myself over their little fight. And then I shared with Taru that just like that I can amuse myself over their little fights, because I know that after 2 minutes they'll be okay again and it's nothing. And in that moment, they are taking it so seriously. Just like that, the divine would also laugh over us that, we, as Taru was sharing, that we take things too seriously. And that is the only reason Mother says that only the human being on this planet is the miserable animal. There is no other animal who is more miserable than human being, because we take things too seriously. We cling to our ideas, opinions, make them too important, that if my thought is rejected, then oh my God, what has happened? Yeah, really, almost a divine comedy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the amusement also for yourself is that sometimes you get like, you know, when you are watching yourself as this third person, you're watching yourself, you're standing in a corner and saying that when you watch yourself, when you get embroiled in it, right? It is I don't know, it has brought a source of lot of questions, you know, because you're at a certain, you've been trying to follow it or trying to understand it, you know, why the drama happens or why this thing happens. And then when you watch yourself, and sometimes I'm amused at, you know, because you're embroiled in it, you know, you get so entangled in it that to loosen yourself up, it takes a bit of I mean, it's like a comedy of errors, no? As and it's also, and it's sometimes quite um, I mean, tragic is too strong a word to be using, but it does feel like, oh, I mean, why am I in this, you know, this thing?
I think that must be the reason why Kabir, a person like Kabir, would call this a forest in which you get entangled. He says that, oh my God, where have you thrown me, oh my Lord? Almost like that. That wherever I go, I get entangled. इधर भी झाड़ी उधर भी झाड़ी बीच झाड़ी के मैं खड़ी, you know, these are words of Kabir, that there is, so it's so sticky, and we think, you know, our thinking is that other things are sticky. I don't realize that I am the honeybee who is going to the honey again and again and getting myself trapped in the honey. This realization, that's why, you know, mother stresses so much on inner shift. Because as long as I am the fly, I will be getting attracted to the nectar. So I have to stop being the fly that does not get entangled to the, you know, the sticky stuff.
In fact, today when Badalji had shared that post on the inner change, right? Yeah. So the circumstances, I mean, you think that the circumstances will change, or you are this thing. So that's how it is, right? I mean, we always think our circumstances are so.
And Buddhism also, you know, Tenzing Palmo also reiterates that the whole idea is that to know that whatever I look at through my senses or hear, I don't have to buy into that. As simple as that. Don't trust your senses because they fool. That's why Kabir would say, these are enemy of yours. These senses are enemy. So Mother and Sri Aurobindo don't say that they are enemy. They have to be refined. That's a good thing. But we believe so much into our senses that how can I not be angry? That person said this to me. So I'm believing in my eyes, I'm believing in my ears, and I'm also believing in the interpretation of the mind. And I become miserable. And then I think that, oh my God, why am I so miserable? Because I'm believing in my senses. Yeah.
As mother said, no, in that thing, after so many beatings, only we will realize, the circumstances won't change at all. Only the change, but it requires lot of beatings. Yeah.
So it has Chitraji, as you say, hittings. I mean, sometimes it has troubled me for a long time, for many, many, many years. I mean, when sort of I started going to the ashram, and I was fairly young, but and these questions have arose, but at that time I didn't know that these books were written, and this thing, and you realize that every time that you come this close, you are thinking that no, you will not get yourself into any that kind of a situation or a circumstance, but you just it just that like Monica said, the vital just takes over, and then
circumstances will be there always. Only that attitude only change. Yeah. That realization come to me very late actually, but now when I'm looking back at this today, especially tomorrow is a new year, we are just laughing. That's all I can feel. Yeah. Monica used to tell this always. You will laugh at the circumstances when you see them. That is what. Yeah.
I just could not laugh when I was in pain. Now I can
Yeah.
laugh at my pain, but not when I was in pain. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what.
Yeah. Saru, you wanted to share something? You look very contemplative.
When, lot of things, well, thankfully, lot of them have already gone. But one thing that stuck me when I read it for the first time, which was very obvious, but I kept missing it. About ego. That how we had read it somewhere now, that it can even cause your death. As in, it doesn't even care about your well-being at all. Like physically, you might just expire only. Like you were saying that you shout, right? Like sometimes I've seen people have those road rage things, especially in Delhi, Gurgaon, and like really old people who feel that they might even have a heart attack trying to say that, my God, you dented my stupid car, right? And yet my car, right? Like how frustrated are our lives that one bang of a car can actually take us to a hospital. First of all, we don't see the big picture, but just to keep knowing whenever I can see it, that it's not helping me, right? Again, it's coming to it, that where is it taking me, where is it taking me, right? Like my stand, that
Yeah.
I'm standing and shaking and shouting, what is it doing to me?
I think this comes to, what I think Nandini had mentioned, this, the desire self, the vital. I mean, as you were sharing, Taru, that it'll just shred you to pieces for its own satisfaction. And this has exactly, these words have been said by Kabir, that wo kahin ka nahi, he says that these five senses, let me remember myself the song. He says, "O Hirna, samajh booj, ban charna." So he's calling that, "Oh dear, please graze this forest very, very carefully." Why? Because these five senses, and later on he says that tohe maar tora mas bikave, you will be getting killed by these senses, and they will be selling off your meat, and giving it to others. And this is what our senses do to us, so
Very true. Very true.
yeah. And we do get shredded to pieces, as if being puppeted around by the vitals,
Yeah.
specifically. Yeah. Unless we have had enough of bleeding, then rising up from our ashes and
Yeah.
kind of gaining.
And also we are alive now. Yeah, I feel like that because of the grace. At least we can realize, yeah, these are all illusions, no? Yeah, not the life. These are all illusions.
I don't know if anyone has sort of observed, but when you also have these small shifts that happen, your your you you tend to get lesser, you tend to fall sick very less, right? I mean, not really like fall sick, but you probably don't have, like a fever or a cold as often as you used to have earlier, or simple minor things, pains and aches that that would probably trouble you earlier. So these things, at least I've observed, that they have relatively, like, come completely, like, drastically down.
पीछे थूक दो थोड़ा सा, Nandini.
That's exactly what I was about to say, that again, mother says that, like, I don't know mother, but unka bhi hai na कि isn't Khalil Gibran, right? कि live a love story but share with no one, do this, because it's like the forces are just there to, again, अच्छा अभी भी मजा नहीं आया, let me kind of, so just offering it all in gratitude, and what a big blessing to
Sing.
have even experienced this. But yeah, try not to share.
Like,
we
this
have-
is something that always intrigues me, because when people talk about like something they've been through, like a suffering, then there's no guilt. But then as soon as you say that, oh God, this is such a nice thing, immediately you're like, oh God, what if something bad happens? Like, yeah.
No, it's not about what if something bad happens, but as if somebody has an eye on us. And the moment we say, it is just, I think it's also grounding, very much grounding for us, that it is lurking right now, the right next corner. Don't be so you're not over it, as if somebody wants to tell me that you're not over it.
Yeah.
And this has happened many a times, Taru and myself, we have shared with each other that the moment I say, okay, now my throat, it was very sensitive, and for past 2 years it has really turned strong.
Don't say it.
The moment this happens, the next day you have something in the throat. I think just to, Divine has this funny sense of humor, because just to tell that, hey, guy, I am here.
Yeah,
they put on ground. Yeah.
but this
Maybe this is, as you said, that ego is lurking inside in a corner. That only invite, that negative forces.
Yeah, but
Maybe
then when you like in one of I think Monica's videos, that when you, I mean, I think like when she says that when mother says you say peace to that part of your body, or wherever, not, I mean, you're just grateful, and you're just looking at the peace that you invite in. There are moments, of course, of sometimes there is you have irritation or something, but I'm saying, when in one of these things she says that you invite that peace into your being, and you give it to your this body that is carrying you, and how grateful you are for it. I mean, I think that's something that I mean, stood out for me very it is it just opened something for me over there.
No, I think the point here, which is that from time to time, we keep on making images about ourselves. So earlier I had this image that, oh my God, I am such a down, lowly person. And now I have this image, I don't even know that it is being created, but it is being created owing to whatever experiences I may be having. That look, something is changing. So this is, again, as Chitradi said, done by the mind only, limited mind or ego only. And it, from time to time, images are being created. Now the image is created, look, I have become a healthier person. I'm not about you, just for example, I have cancer, right? Now I can also reflect over it and say, look, for the past year I have not gone to a doctor, but I dare not say that, because you never know when the things change. And the idea is not to make images about ourselves. That is the only idea. Can we live without images? So to, as Taru was sharing, to have a love story, but not to mention it. Krishnamurti said, to live a beautiful life, I think it was maybe Khalil Gibran, and tell no one. because what happens when I am telling someone, what happens is, I don't know, but an image is being created that yes, I am like that. And then the divine or the universe does something so that to break that image, that hey, don't think that you have become like that. Anything can happen anytime. Yeah. So basically being comfortable with that groundlessness that we were sharing that day,
Sure.
I think morning meditation. Yeah. To be okay in uncertainty.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, I think one more thing about this sharing that helped me is like, say, when I'm saying I haven't had this for so long, one thing is the ego part, right? Like something in me is like making that image, like you were saying. But the other thing is, when I'm saying that, there's also fear in me that thank God it hasn't happened. And when it happens again, and I'm again standing after some time and living, and so somehow it feels that what if it happens, doesn't matter, right? It happened again, here I am standing again. It happened again, here I am standing again. So that really helps me in maintaining that surrender, or this thing that if even if the worst happens, I'm still taken care of. So that thing also I've seen that movement in me, which again takes me toward more gratitude, and it feels that even these sharings have a purpose that okay, bol diya, fir se ho gaya, ek thapad aur pada, and again I'm okay. Like what a blessing, right?
Yeah, in this of yoga, Sri Aurobindo brought out this, what you are sharing now, Taru, with very beautifully release from body, release from the heart and mind. That release from the body, he says, you treat the body as a cloth, a detachable cloth, actually. It's very beautiful. Yeah. You see like that. Whatever happens to your body, you see from your mind as a third person. As you are seeing, watching a third person, you watch like that. Actually.
I think Chitraji, what I was trying to, you've conveyed that what I was trying to say was the same. I think, in a similar, this thing, by the presence and the readings and the sharings, you don't attach yourself so much to the, this thing that, yeah, even if it happens, it's okay. But sometimes you observe that you have not, maybe it is by the grace of whatever that their presence that is there. So
Yeah, not maybe, but certainly. Yeah. Should we call it a Friday? Yeah.
I'll have to.
Anything from you, Meera or Sarda ji, before we end?
No, nothing.
There was this not a big deal, but just a message posted in the Sri Aurobindo group today. In this last day of the year, let us take the resolution that all our weaknesses and obstinate obscurities will drop from us along with the finishing year.
Beautiful.
So thank you so much, and have a happy new year. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Taru.
Thank you.
Happy New
Happy New
Year.
Year. Happy New Year.
Taru, can you just post that on the group that?
I'll do that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.